So I have been really thinking about whether or not OpenAI has a split personality. I'm really kind of concerned, almost concerned for them. I don't know, whether they're good or they're bad or they're evil or they're fighting for the growth of humanity. There's two things that seem to be going on. On the one hand, we've got this OpenAI, they're this cutting edge R&D champion. They're researching for the betterment of humanity. They're going to lead us forward to a bright new future. And on the other hand, they seem to just becoming another tech company that's, big tech, building products, laying in features. I saw a talk from the other day of maybe they're building a social network behind the scenes, and maybe there's some hardware coming down the line. And they just seem to be really, are they one thing? Are they the other? Do they even know? And I think this is playing out at the moment within ChatGPT itself. And you can see that kind of as a product, but it didn't really start life as a product. It was a tech demo, really. It sort of emerged out of the technology they were working on. But right now, they're sort of adding features, and they've got pricing tiers. You've got things like the projects, which is kind of useful. They're talking about adding cross connections between different chats so that you can remember things that have gone between different chats. I saw a thing the other day about an image library coming in, or maybe is already in some versions of it. It's just sort of layering in these different features, while at the same time, in the same app, their whole models seems to be a bit of a unfathomable spaghetti mess. Like, what model do you use for what? I think last time I looked, there was 4.1, 4.1 mini, 4.1 nano, 4.0, 4.0 mini, 4.5, 0.3, 0.4. Well, how's anyone
Speaking
supposed
in code,
to?
Rob.
I know. How is anyone supposed to know what to do with this thing, and where it really sits? I don't know. You kind of understand what people look at the chat GPT kind of product and get really frustrated because maybe they accidentally used the wrong model. They think they're getting nonsense out. They thought they had a conversation in one chat window and it should be remembered, but they have the new chat window and currently it's not remembered, or it's forgotten the context and how big the context window really is. And what about that image I created the other day? And why can't you just resize the image? And it's just like it's a bit of a mess.
Yeah.
So that was a bit of a rant.
You're not wrong. You're not wrong. But I think that what we're seeing is fascinating. I think what you're seeing is potentially the emergence of the next Google or the next Apple, but in real time. I can only just remember the way that Google kind of started and then took off. But if you think back, Google was an academic project, right? I think that was where it was born. How can we make the internet searchable? And they came up with this PageRank algorithm, and that was part of the academia thing. And then Google was born, and then they did search. And just like any massive company, if you asked what did Google do today, well, they do search, they do office software, they do photo stuff, they do storage, they do cloud, they do everything, because all these massive companies do everything. Yeah? But OpenAI have been this little company that no one really knew about for a while now. And it was very focused on research. And then, like you said, they released that tech demo, ChatGPT, and it kind of caught the imagination of everyone and is currently transforming the world. So they're in this kind of messy middle now. They did their startup years where they didn't really know who they were. Then they hit on something big, and I don't think that's where it's going to stop. I think, first of all, they've got to figure out how to really productize what they've got and make money out of it. But it's clear already that they're not stopping with a chatbot. They've just released this thing called Codex, which is a command line interface tool for helping developers write code using the ChatGPT models. They've obviously released Sora, which is a whole separate website at the moment, which lets you do video stuff. They are apparently in talks to buy Windsurf, which is a development IDE. So they wanted to buy Cursor, but it wasn't for sale. So now they're looking at buying Windsurf. And I think what you're going to see is hopefully they figure out the productization of ChatGPT, but I think they're going to go far and wide. And I think you could be looking at the next Google or the next Apple. It wouldn't surprise me entirely if ChatGPT kind of evolved into what Google evolved into, if you like. We use Google to search for everything, and we use Google to buy stuff. And already I'm using Google a lot less, and I think a lot of people are. I mean, you're right with the model naming. It's and it's like they can't. It's like they've got some kind of sickness because they tried, didn't they? They said, "Oh yeah, we're not doing this old stuff anymore." And we hear what you're saying, and we're gonna just have one model, and it's going to be GPT-5, and then it's and that they backtracked on that, and I think they backtracked on it because everybody else was pumping out all this stuff at the same time, so they wanted to keep up, but they couldn't be bothered to solve the naming problems, so they just kept making up other spaghetti names. Having said that, though, the O3 and the O4 mini high models are really good, and they're quite very different. It's probably worth talking about them, actually.
Yeah. Again, I literally just went through it earlier, trying to find, what the models were and what I thought they did. And so it's 4.1 is really about high performance text, I guess, right? So it's like you've got lots of text and you want to do something with it. That's the one you can come to do code maybe, but you've got the mini and the nano versions, which is scaled down to try and save power, save costs, make things faster. 4.0 is the full multimodal thing, right? So if you want to process images and text and maybe generate a conversation in audio or do full translation, you kind of go down the 4.0 and maybe the 4.0 mini route because you want to be slightly more efficient. And in 4.5 is the full all bells and whistles, maybe top
Man,
8
okay,
version.
let me stop you there.
Is that all right?
It is complicated, and it really is complicated. But I have spent a bit of time digging into this, and I think I know the answer now. So
All right.
I think I can probably try and explain this and navigate this mess of spaghetti, and it's a bit more complicated. So they bought out 4.0, and that's the model that we know and love and use pretty much every day. And that is the multimodal model, and they keep improving it. So they keep updating its knowledge cutoff. They keep tweaking the way it works, and they keep releasing their new stuff like this image gen stuff into 4.0. And it's really good at conversational stuff. So if you want to talk to, if you want a therapist, right, use 4.0. If you want to write some stuff, then 4.0 with Canvas is really great for kind of doing co-editing. 4.1 isn't released if you're a punter. It's only available as a developer API, and essentially it's just 4.0. It's just 4.0, but they've called it 4.1 because I think it's because they needed to be able to essentially version something from the developer's point of view, and this helped them navigate that problem. So 4.1, which you use via the API, is giving you the same stuff that 4.0 is giving you if you're using it via
But I'm right in saying that 4.1 mini and nano are just stripped down versions, so you use less tokens.
Well, yes. So the mini version is a reduced parameter model, and so it can spit stuff out faster. It's less accurate, but it costs less per token if you're using it via the API. So if you're automating a load of stuff and you've got some mundane jobs to do that don't require super intelligence or high accuracy, then you can get away with using a lot of these smaller models. And if you're developing stuff, typically you tend to develop it on the bigger models and then get it to work on the lowest one you can because you're trying to minimize the cost. 4.5, that's gone. That's dead. That was an experimental preview, which they've now decided it's end of life. That's been discontinued. So 4.5 lived for a little while, then died, and it got replaced by 4.1, which of course makes loads of sense, right? But it didn't actually get replaced by 4.1 because, as we just said, 4.1 is actually just 4.0. Are you with me yet? Makes perfect sense.
I think so. I missed the discontinuation of 4.5. That's disappointing.
Yeah, that's gone. Now, the O models. The O models are their thinking models, and we first got introduced to O1 and then O1 Pro, and then skipped O2. Don't know what happened to that. It went straight to O3. And we had O3 mini and O3 mini high for a while, but we never had the full O3. So in that world, just before like last week, we had O1 and we had O3 and O3 mini, and these were the thinking models that did stuff step by step, and you could see its thinking trace. And that was the first time really we moved from kind of fast fire model to let's slow it down and let's think more deeply and let's get an answer that we've developed over multiple steps. And that led to better results when you were doing complex tasks. Not necessarily if you're writing, but if you wanted to solve a difficult problem or a maths problem or a logic problem, the O models were better.
Let me just say something there. What possessed them to create something called 4.0 and then O4? Like, I mean, I know there's zeros and O's, but honestly, like, again,
this will be in the history book. So can you imagine when they're trying to trace the history in years to come of OpenAI, they're trying to document all these models and thinking, because that's what we're thinking, right? What the hell are they thinking? So yeah, those are models. You saw a step change, I suppose, and this multi-stage thinking process. But they had a load of problems because they couldn't use all the bells and whistles and all the tools that the 4.0 model could. So it didn't have image gen. It couldn't always search the web, but it did get updated to search the web later. It could kind of generate code, but it couldn't run code within the sandbox environment in the same way that 4 could. So it was really reserved for the research and problem-solving space. It wasn't meant to be a general-purpose model. Now, last week, I think it was last week or the week before, they released O3. Now, so not O3 mini or not O3 mini high, because they were released first.
Yeah.
They released O3 full.
Now, are we to assume that O3 is more advanced than O4 or the other way around?
Well, that's a whole nother question. But yes, so O3, and they also released, this is such a weird way of doing it, but they also released O4 mini and O4 mini high, but we haven't yet got O4. So if you're trying to put any kind of logical sense to their naming conventions whatsoever, it's almost like it's backwards. It's like they're teasing you. It's like, here's mini high, here's the big one. It's finally released.
But the madness is you've got these two tracks, right? You've got, 4.0, 4.1, potentially maybe there was a 4.5, but potentially there's going to be a 5. So those numbers are incrementing. But it feels like the O numbers are decreasing. Yeah. So,
I think basically, don't get too hung up on it. Clearly, they've got very clever people, right? These people that open it. And they're so clever that us mere mortals could never assume to understand their naming convention, but I'm sure it's genius.
You think they should just ask the LLM to do it for them, right? Come up with a decent naming convention for all these models that make sense.
But anyway, if we finally got to the good bit, right? So O3 and O4 models that they've just released are pretty game-changing, actually. So they go beyond what we had in the previous O model, the O1 model, the O3 mini models, because they can think and reason over multiple steps. They also, and this is really important, have access to the full suite of capabilities and tools that 4.0 has, right? So they can do image stuff, they can search the web, they can even do slightly new stuff, like they can go off and get the weather, the actual weather forecast. And so they've got a selection of 5, 6, 7 tools that they can use. But what makes it even more impressive is that they use them interchangeably in solving a problem. You can ask it to do something, and as part of its multi-step thought process, it'll first do a web search, and then it'll write some code, and then it'll go off and analyze a whole bunch of stuff, and then it'll do another web search, and then it'll run some kind of maths model. And so it's the first model we've seen that's using multiple tools to come up with some kind of significant answer. And it's agentic. It's their first fully agentic model.
Are they framing it as that? I haven't seen any of the publicity around this.
I don't know, but they're definitely talking up the agent stuff at the moment. That's clearly a future direction or current future direction for OpenAI. I don't know if they've come out and said it's our first agentic model, but it is. It uses all of the tools available in its arsenal to give you its best possible attempt at an answer. And so if you want to do some thought pieces or some difficult research or some difficult problem solving, these latest O models are a game changer and are a significant step up from what we had before.
Yeah, it's interesting, the whole thinking about the costs of these things. I did see a report where I think it was Sam Altman, or if it wasn't, it was one of his henchmen, said something like, "Can you please stop being polite to the AI because it's costing me millions." Did you see that?
Yeah, no,
All the please
that
and
was.
the thank yous.
Yeah, I don't think he did say it. I think it was tongue-in-cheek replied to somebody. Somebody said, "Oh, does it cost loads of money? Would you say please and thank you?" And he was like, he said something off the cuff. But I don't. I think it's probably not. I think the press have blown that out of all proportion.
But it's an interesting connect, because obviously I think I'm right in saying that the reason for these mini and these nano models is once you've refined what it is you want to do, you can run them on those smaller models more cheaply. If you're directing, so if you're doing sort of things that we do, you're connecting directly via the API, you're using less tokens, all that kind of stuff to kind of do that. And is that the only value in your mind for those and the nano seems to be a new version of it.
Yeah, and they're quicker. They tend to produce their answers a lot quicker. They don't think quite as long. You're not rate limited in the same way that you are. So actually, there are rate limits, unless you're on the Pro plan, which costs a lot of money. There are rate limits on the full fat models on O1 and O3, and on the mini high ones as well. If you use it a lot, you'll see the message pop up that says, "Oh, you're just about to exceed your limit. You've got 25 goes left or something."
You mentioned the windsurf thing. They're trying to buy windsurf, and they were trying to previously buy Cursor. Both those products use Anthropic, right, to kind of process their stuff.
No, they can use all the models.
You can put your own one in, but by default they'll use the Anthropic one. Do you think would that just continue? Do you think? I mean, obviously it's all speculation, but these new models are getting better from OpenAI in terms of being able to do the coding piece and stuff around that. Is Anthropic still, the Claude model, still the best one for coding?
Different people say different things on this. They made a change, I think, with Sonnet 3.7. And I've heard some people complaining that it's almost too helpful, and it goes out of its way to write far more code than it needs to, or rethink things that it wasn't asked to. So actually, there are some developers that prefer the old sort of Sonnet 3.5 model. Meanwhile, I think OpenAI is killing it. I think O1 Pro, which is a model we haven't talked about, because that's the one you have to have. You can only get access to that if you're spending 200 quid a month. So
Right.
So before O3 and O4 came out, O1 Pro was where it was at in terms of the best model for OpenAI, and that was really good at coding. And personally, I found that O3 Mini High was also really, really good at coding. I just don't think they got as much notice taken of it in the developer community. I don't know why. I think this is why OpenAI are doing what they're doing, which is looking at potentially buying Windsurf, because they can see, in the same way that developers drove the App Store and helped make the Apple ecosystem what it was, OpenAI can see that there's a huge community here that are going to drive this forward. And if they're a community that's stuck on using these Anthropic models, then actually perhaps that's a slight concern. So it's a smart thing to do, to take that developer community seriously. Releasing that Codex utility was a smart move. Buying Windsurf would be a smart move. I would imagine if they do that, if they're smart, they would tie you to their models, which obviously neither of those products do at the moment. They let you choose between the Anthropic models and the GPT models, and also you can use whatever model you like within reason, via OLAMA or whatever.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting that you mentioned the whole making it too easy for the developers, or the responses were too friendly. So you look at kind of a sideways thing that's happening at the moment as well. You must have seen, everyone saw the when the image generation stuff came out, and the internet was awash with starter pack action figures. Everyone. For about 10 minutes, or at least maybe a week or so, everyone did it. I personally didn't do one. Did you?
Did I do one? It was the one I did was rubbish, so I never showed it to anyone.
But social was just awash with it, and I guess it speaks to this idea that what was science fiction yesterday is old hat today, because you don't do it now. You don't see him anymore. But there was a news story about how there's a whole bunch of essentially creatives, people that make these models, were aghast at what was happening, because people were now becoming bored of these action figures of themselves, or celebrities were no longer going to make action figures of themselves because everyone hated them, because the internet was awash with them. And it kind of highlighted, I think, actually no, it started a campaign. It was called something like Starter Pack No AI, or No AI Action Figure, or something like that. It was a hashtag that was going around, and it was started by these creatives, and it kind of reminded me of this idea that there's really two camps, I guess, two camps of people. One that see, I can do more, and I can do it faster, and I can do it better, with the tooling, and one is like, well, it's taken away all the fun stuff, so I'm just going to pretend it's not there and fight against it. And it's just your comment on that particular flavour of I can't remember which model you said it was, but it was too good, it was too friendly, it was too nice, it was too something, that the engineers sort of push back on it. And I wonder if there's a bit of that about that. It's like, it needs to be, I still need to be able to do the fun stuff that I enjoy, and it still needs to be hard enough that it feels like I'm adding value, and therefore I'm going to push back against the tooling rather than embrace it and see how I can accelerate it. I just thought that was fascinating. There was a whole piece on that particular action figure situation. Whole piece on how they were going to drive action figure creators to be like artisan artists, and cupboard makers. So even though in the age of flat pack, you've still got some people will still go to a carpenter and some artisan, cabinet maker to create them the perfect piece for their home. It's interesting to see kind of how the mass availability of some of this capability is going to increase productivity, but maybe create niche areas as well for specialists.
Yeah, I think the jury's still out on that. It's this Gartner hype cycle thing, isn't it? I think we've definitely gone through the stage, we're still going through it, I don't know, where we're panicked that AI is going to change everything and take all the jobs away. And I like I said before, I think as developers, we have experienced this wave a little bit ahead of where everyone else is, because it came first for our jobs. Well, that was the prevailing thought.
That was the perception.
It's gonna, and you still hear people like, even it was Obama was saying, it can code better than 70% of developers, and you got these intelligent people that are making these comments based on what they've heard. And the trouble is, they're not wrong, but the message that you hear is, well, that means that all the developer jobs are going to go away. And that's not what it means. Yes, they can code well, but not unattended. And I think this is a frustration. I'm starting to, in my own thinking, come down on the other side of this sort of hype cycle now. And it's going to change jobs, but I'm less convinced it's going to decimate them.
Because there's a big difference, isn't there, I guess, between being able to vibe something out and actually having something which is trustworthy, reliable, and ready for production deployment.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
And that's across the board, right? So whether that's developing applications, developing software, or whether it's building AI action figures, going from a picture of an action figure that looks kind of the same as everyone else's to someone actually wanting to mass produce one and buy one in a shop. There's a big gap between those two things, right? And in the same way, you can vibe code out a prototype, proof of concept, a small application.
Yeah. I think this is the nuance that's getting lost. And, when you travel a little way with this technology, you start to begin to understand the limitations, and you start to see the hype for what it is. What this whole vibe coding thing has done now let's just take some time to explain this, because it means different things to different people, right? So when I think of vibe coding, I think of it in the originals. And by the way, I hate that freaking term.
That's because you're old.
I wish it had never popped into the human consciousness. But when I think of it, what I think it means is just issuing instructions at an LLM unthinkingly and iterating until it comes up with something that you're happy with. And that's what it meant when it was first spoke. But now, like language evolves, right? This term has seemed to evolve now to mean, oh no, it just means coding with an LLM, which is very different. So when you hear the term vibe coding, it means one of those two things, and it's tending now towards just AI assisted coding. So can we stop calling it vibe coding, please?
You start a campaign. There's a hashtag in that.
Yeah, but what it did, so in the original sense of the word, what vibe coding did for probably the first time was it allowed somebody who was essentially a non-developer to very quickly create something that worked or seemed to work. And there was a whole bunch of code underneath of that thing that was powering it, and the person that built it didn't need to know anything about that code. And that probably hasn't really ever happened before. That power or that new creative mode that was sort of brought to the world, it's a new thing.
It's similar in a way, and it's a much kind of lower level idea, but it's similar in a way to that button that most people don't press in applications like Word, where you can generate or PowerPoint or Keynote or whatever. All of them have got the same thing. Under the export options, it says export to HTML, which means that you could effectively turn your slide deck or your Word document or your PowerPoint, whatever, into a website. And it's kind of one thing removed from front page back in the day, or Dreamweaver to a lesser extent, where you could move boxes on the screen, it would generate you some code, and you would draw your website. And it would be terrible, but technically it was a website.
Mm.
So it's kind of similar in a sense that if you could write a Word document, or you can build a Keynote or a Google slide, you can build a website. It just might not be very good.
Yeah, and I think with the vibe coding thing, it's allowed people to create software for the first time without having to think about it and without having to understand how it works. And that's cool. That's cool, right? It might actually get more people interested in software and interested in creating good software. But that's great if you're creating something for you or creating to explore a concept. And what a lot of people don't seem to really realize or appreciate is that is not the same thing as building software, the kind of software that powers our universe. The stuff that runs the nuclear power stations or keeps airplanes in the sky, or the stuff that runs production lines, or the complex e-commerce websites that you'll be used to using, or various SaaS apps that you use at a large scale, like a Spotify or whatever, or a YouTube. Okay, software needs to be built to be safe, to last, to be maintainable. It's built with the expectation that it's going to be around for a long time. And so there is a amount of effort and cost associated with building that thing, because you know that you're going to be investing in it and building a business on it for many years to come. And that's why software is complicated, and that's why designing software is complicated. And the AI tools we've got now, so the modern vibe coding, is going to be great in speeding up the generation of the actual code, but ensuring its maintainability and its fitness for purpose and its architectural soundness and its safety, and its viability for the long term is the job of software developers. And that, I don't believe, is going to change or be reduced away by the vibe coding era and these new set of tools. I don't think we're going to have that kind of software written by somebody who doesn't know what the thing's doing under the hood. So, you've got to understand, vibe coding is great for experimenting, and it brings a whole new way to experience software development and the ability to create something out of nothing, creative expression. But it's not software development. So the vibe coding in its original form is not software development.
But I guess the nuance to that is that the tooling and the skills and the new approach is going to impact the way that we do build software. So the way that we go about things is going to radically change over the coming weeks, months, and years. But fundamentally, it's still software engineers that are going to be doing it. It's just going to be happening in a different way with different tools, with different mindset.
I think so.
Yeah.
I do believe that. And I think what's interesting though, because you've now got this new creative expression where you can create applications without really having to understand too much about how they're working under the hood. It gives developers actually another power that they shouldn't just ignore or scoff at. It's another tool in the toolbox, because software development's always been really slow, but now we have a way to build really fast. But you don't want to build really fast and then ship that thing into production, because that's insane, and you're going to come up against all the problems that we just touched on. But building really fast is good for prototyping and getting a sense of stuff very quickly. And I think it gives software developers and the software development industry a new way, and perhaps a better way, to try things out, a faster way to try things out. There's a couple of things I've seen recently. And some of the things we're actually doing internally, which is we can now, instead of just designing something up front in a week or two, and arriving at a slideshow like clickable prototype, in that same very compressed amount of time, we can develop something that looks and feels like a real product. Now that's great for bringing your idea to life very quickly, and for opening the eyes of investors to see the potential, and maybe even to get something out into a beta testing group or an alpha testing group to get some early feedback. So that's a really powerful new thing that can be done very quickly, that couldn't be done very quickly before. But you need to understand that if you then want to take that forward into a multi-year, 5-10-year investment and build your business around that bit of software, that thing that you built in 2 weeks is not what you ship. You need to then start kind of dissecting that and evolving that, and you need to switch modes. And I've been thinking about this a bit, right? Because, there's this whole kind of this famous book called Thinking Fast and Thinking Slow.
Yeah.
And actually a lot of that is the inspiration for kind of these LLMs, and the fact that we need a different mode of thinking to start reasoning and to start doing deductive and formal logic and that kind of stuff. So do we as developers need to start understanding that there's building fast and building slow, and building fast is the new superpower, and that's great. But if we're going to build these software systems that have to be safe and they're multi-year investment, and we're building a business and expecting return, then at some point early on we need to switch modes, or maybe throughout the whole cycle there's kind of switch between modes, building fast and building slow. I
think that's probably closer, isn't it? I think it's the ability to switch modes during the cycle and back again, because there's going to be different times where different things are relevant, and that's the real challenge right now to software engineers, to people in our industry, is that the reason we have to invest in understanding what these vibe tooling methods are all about is, we need to be testing and experimenting and playing and building prototypes and running hobby projects and doing all this stuff behind the scenes, because the next generation are going to do it by default. They're going to take the same amount of time to acquire the levels of experience that our senior guys have got, the architects have got, the people that you want involved in those deployments, those enterprise projects, those production environments. Anyone coming new to the industry is still going to have to build up that muscle memory, build up that experience level somehow, but they're going to come with all of that thinking fast ability that the current wave of generation have to learn. And if they don't learn that, they're going to get left behind.
Yeah, we need to be deliberate about the building slow bit and the teaching of that in a way that we haven't had to before. I do think the on-ramps for employers who are looking at how they take on new developers and train them, that's going to completely change. We used to sort of throw them a little bug that's easy to fix, or or shadow a developer for a while, or whatever. But I think we need to rethink that. What does the first 3 months of a graduate joining a company as a software developer look like? What does the first 2 years look like? Because actually you've got to build that muscle memory and that thinking slow ability, and that's the thing that's got to be taught. Just while I remember, the second point around that kind of building fast and building slow thing that was surfaced, I thought was really interesting, was in software projects, as you're going through the development cycle, you might get hit with a choice. There are several options, and you need to pick the best one, or at the very least, you need to pick the least worst one. So, what we'd done previously is in a development sprint, you'd have a spike, and a developer might spend some time looking at the options, exploring which ones would work best, and understanding why, and maybe documenting that, and then you'd implement the solution. But if you switch to the building fast mode, and with these new kind of LLM tools, then you can go a bit beyond that. You can actually prototype out 3 different solutions based on 3 different tech stacks very quickly, and probably have a much better understanding because you can see it and you can play with it and you can see how it interacts with the rest of the software. So you get a feel for which one is the right architectural choice. And then you can, once you've made that, you get rid of the building fast stuff that you did, because that didn't have all the thinking and the belts and braces. But you're standing on firmer ground. There's better, more deeper reasoning behind the choice that you've made, because you've been able to try it relatively quickly. And I think that's something else that's been brought to the table that we didn't have a year ago.
Yeah, it's being able to apply your experience, your understanding, your muscle memory in a much more efficient way to enforce the decisions that you're going to make going forward. It's interesting, because I think this really does impact how organizations of all types start to think about how AI can be integrated into their business in a successful way. Because this is going to happen, right? If you don't do it to your existing organization, over time, new organizations are going to spring up thinking about this stuff the right way off the bat. But I think there's a real danger, particularly with more technically aware organizations, of almost starting at the super complicated end and forgetting the start at the beginning. So let me put this another way. If you've got, imagine you've got kind of a quadrant, I suppose, and you've got, down one side you've got the levels of integration, and along the bottom you've got levels of automation. Okay, and at the bottom end you've kind of got low integration, low automation, and at the top corner you've got high integration, high automation. Because we're all sophisticated, mature, well-established professionals, we want to go straight for let's get some good results, right? So in a technology development or software engineering mindset, we might say, LLM, give me the full application that's enterprise ready now, go. Oh, it don't work. Therefore, AI is rubbish and my journey ends there. Whereas where we should be starting is that kind of low integration, low automation mode, that assistant mode, that okay, I'm gonna ask the LLM this particular question about comparing these 2 scenarios, and it's going to give me back some more information that I can then apply manually to the code that I'm building. And then, over time, your levels of integration will go up. So instead of it just being getting some assistant, maybe you're using a formal co-pilot or something, so it's writing code alongside you, and eventually you sort of move towards, maybe full on agentic software somewhere down the line where it's going off and solving problems for you. But you can't start there because it's hard, and you'll mess it up and you'll fail and it won't work, and maybe some of the tech isn't quite ready yet. But for whatever reason, we have a tendency to kind of skip this slower bit, which enables us just to think fast and jump almost to the bit where we want the technology to do the thinking slow for us, which fails.
And that's what we've seen in the adoption of AI tooling as it stands today, using things like Copilot and ChatGPT, using things like the new coding tools. So we're now, 12 months on in this journey, but you roll back 12 months and it was exactly that. It's like somebody tries something, it doesn't work, therefore it's shit. I'm not using it again. But okay, but you need to, and I think it was I can't remember the guy that said it now. I think it was the guy that built Fast AI, the Python library, and he's well respected and well regarded and in the machine learning community. And he said, look, what you've got to understand is LLMs are very, very complex computer systems, and when you start trying to use them, you will be shit at it because you've never done it before, and they're very, very complex computer systems. But the more you persevere and the more you try, the better you get and the better results you get. And I think that's been, on our journey, that's been true. But I think that's lost on a lot of people. And you try something the first time, in whatever way you try it, maybe a prompt's not very good, or the results you're expecting weren't defined quite right, or you're not using the right tool for the job, whatever it is. You try it, you get a result that you didn't want, and you just give up. You just decide it's rubbish. And actually, a lot of people do operate in that mental model. But I think it's like with any tool, isn't it? The first time I tried to use a saw, it got stuck in the wood because I didn't know how to saw properly. I just got stuck. And you're like, you need to learn how to use a tool. And because this is such an amazing tool, you should put the effort in to learn it.
Yeah, and I guess we need to get out of our own way. All senior professionals across all industries, people are mature, been doing it for years. They're top of the tree of this new wave of tooling, but not just tooling, a new way of thinking, a new way of operating in the world has come along. But you don't want to go back to the beginning. You're the master of your domain. You're the master of your tool set. You're the master of your process, the way things work. But as I say, you need to kind of just put your ego aside and actually be prepared to apply your current levels of muscle memory and maturity to a whole new way of doing things to kind of take you on the next journey from the beginning.
And yeah, and we've seen this in the developer community. It's been fascinating, and it's happened before. It happened with like the move from assembly language to high level languages, but it's all happened again. And you saw that resistance from these people that had done all their learning and they were top of the tree, and they didn't. Why do I have to unlearn it and learn some new way of doing something? And there was a heavy resistance. And obviously you had the early adopters, and then you've got the fast followers, and then you've got the kind of, what do they call it, the sort of early majority and the late majority. I think we're transitioning to something. I don't know if we're transitioning to the fast followers or to the early majority, but I've seen definitely a shift in some of the software developers community to, okay, this is here now. We're gonna figure out how to work with it. Whereas 12 months ago, there was definitely a lot more resistance.
It's just the pace, isn't it? It's so difficult to know where we are because everything is multiplied and moving so fast. I saw a thing, again, it was linked to this, the image stuff that we talked about a few weeks ago. I think OpenAI put some numbers out. They said basically in the first week, they broke all the records of the first week of ChatGPT, got released to whenever it was, and they had 1 million users in a week. It was incredible. They dropped the AI, the image generation stuff a couple of weeks ago, and also everyone was creating images all over the place. They were adding 1 million users an hour. It's like, what? I mean, it's just utterly insane. And that pace, that momentum, I think has affected our perception of everything.
Yeah. Did you see that bit? I think it was Dan Priestley again. Was it him? Don't know. But there was a woman that just walked into a shop, and she walked up to the counter and she said, I want this particular shampoo. Have you got it in stock? And then the guy behind the counter smiled because she'd showed her a picture of the shampoo on ChatGPT.
Right.
So what was interesting about that is she wanted that particular shampoo because she had asked ChatGPT about her hair and what she wanted and what she didn't like. And ChatGPT had recommended her this shampoo. She didn't try the shampoo. She didn't smell the shampoo. She didn't.
Wow.
She didn't go online and look at the shampoo. She just went straight to the shop with the picture that I want this one. Now that is pretty game changing, isn't it? I mean,
that's wild.
The whole buying loop is turned on its head because you trust ChatGPT to recommend you the right thing. So you're not going out. You're not shopping around. You're not. I know ordering in samples or trying out different products or whatever it is. You've gone straight to your source of inspiration. It's given you the answer. You go straight to the shop and buy it. And
wow.
What does that mean for Google? What does that mean for e-commerce? What does that mean if you're like?
I mean, it's taken all the stages out of the buying cycle, right? So people are not. If that's the case, people are not kind of going through kind of the evaluation stage. They're not comparing products. They're not looking for authority and confirmation that they're making the right choice. There's no social proof.
They've just got it from their personal bot.
Exactly. ChatGPT has done it for them. The AI has done it for them. I guess inevitably, and maybe this is how it gets monetized in the end, but inevitably stuff's just going to get designed so that the LLMs, the bots can identify the right result, right? Sponsored doesn't appear at the top of the list now. Sponsored is just the only answer you get back.
Well, yeah.
Kind of the inevitable conclusion.
But I think this is OpenAI's USP because they've been quite upfront now about their mission and what they want ChatGPT to become. And it is the most helpful, most friendly assistant. And with a deep connection with you, it knows you, it understands you, and it responds to what you want in the way that you want it to respond. So the whole ethos is as a personal agent for you that gets you. So this plays really well into that shampoo thing, because you've now got this AI that knows you and understands you, and you probably, maybe you've talked to it about, your likes, your dislikes, your family, your worries, your hopes, your dreams, what you did last Sunday. And obviously now with its new memory feature, it's got access to everything you've ever done. Then it can give you highly personalized results. It is essentially the new Google, right? Google used to be the thing that had all the data on you. That all these e-commerce sites, they buy that data off Google so they could do personalization. They track you across the web. They build this picture of you. ChatGPT has that picture of you, probably better than Google does, better than Facebook does. It probably knows you better. And it becomes a source of authority in of itself. And I think that's so powerful. And I would be so worried if I was Google.
Yeah, it's only, I guess, if they can maintain the levels of trust, though, right? I mean, trust in Google has been eroding for years, partly because originally the hidden way they used to put sponsorship in the results, so you weren't really getting the best result, you were getting the one that was being paid for. And then things like, even like, when you search for show me the best phone or the best laptop for my needs or whatever, and you get hit up with a website with the top 10 best food processors for you, but they're not the top 10 best food processors. They're the 10 that have got the best affiliate links for the person providing the list. And everyone knows that now. Everyone really knows that now. So you can't trust those. Oh, number one, therefore I need to buy it. And somehow these AI products have got to walk that tightrope of maintaining trust such that the result that they give you, you believe, and don't just assume that that's what they're trying to sell. I mean, you see that in comparison sites, you see that on holiday booking sites. It's the one at the top of the list. It used to be the obvious choice, but now it's the one I assume is being paid to be there.
And this is why I think OpenAI's strategy, if I understand it correctly, means that they could end up being a very significant and serious part of our lives and a very, very significant business, because they seem to be, at the moment, lots of things could happen. The business models can change. They could get bought, who knows. But they have this amazing mission around personalization and authority and helpfulness. They're framing that as their chat experience, which means the ability to recommend products and cut out Google is there. But to your point, the kind of second pillar, if you like, of their approach is one that they want to build trust. And if you think about the relationship, I don't know, between like enterprise software providers like Microsoft and Google, Microsoft has maneuvered itself into the enterprise space where it has high trust. Enterprise trusts Microsoft. Google is known for selling user data, and so it's struggled in the trust space. So if OpenAI can nail the personalization and the data collection of like a Google, but they maintain the privacy and they develop that trust level as well, then you've got two very, very powerful things there.
Yeah, I just find it incredible how quickly these things change. I mean, the fact that we're even talking about potential of another organization surpassing Google. It was only a couple of weeks ago we were talking about Apple going to zero as a result as well. And you think actually these technology companies, these products, these platforms, they shouldn't be able to fail because they've got the thing that matters, right? The key thing that matters for any product-based company is distribution, right? No matter how good your product is, you need to be able to get the word out and get the message out. Right. And you think, how Google's got distribution, Apple's got distribution. How have they missed something so badly that was able to be surpassed? It's mind blowing, and it's a warning sign, isn't it? So every organisation on the planet who thinks, well, I've got my market sewn up, I don't need to worry about this new thing. I mean, this new thing is so big, it's going to change it all. I'm talking about catching a breath. I think that's it. I think that's the pod.
Cool. Till next time.
Well, that wasn't too bad.
We need to work on these outros.